Greetings, my fellow film lovers, stop and thinkers. This is L3's News Podcast. My name is Craig, transmitting from the beautiful Swampy Mangoes of South Florida. And today's date, Thursday, November 29th, 2018. So let us begin. Thanks for tuning in, my friends. Hopefully everyone's doing well. Yeah, it was a little brisky out here in South Florida. A little bit stuffy, but I will manage. I'm in the heart of downtown Fort Lauderdale. Beautiful day. Some clouds in the sky. Much real nice, pleasant. Nice little vibe. Hanging out. Want to do a show. Yeah, so I've been keeping tabs on what's been going on. Even since the horrific events that occurred at Stoneman Douglas. There's folks talking about banning certain weapons in our great state of Florida. They call it assault weapons. I call it defense. Because sometimes these weapons can be used to protect others. Innocent people. Against all forms of tyranny. However, you got individuals out there believe we don't need them. We'll rely on the police or the government to take care of us if it's necessary. Well, my friends, you have to look at everything in a bigger picture. Because the truth of the matter is, to be very frank, there is a ballot petition out that was official on November 5th of 2018. I thank my colleague for the Florida Tenter on his Facebook page for sharing that. And the organization is called Ban Assault Weapons Now. And I will read this and give you my intake on it. And we'll talk about, I guess, one more thing pertaining to the subject. And so I will read this and explain why it's null and void. So, this came from the myflorida.com site in a PDF format. It says here Constitutional Amendment Petition Form. That's the name, the address, and all that, registration number. The ballot title Prohibits Possession of Defined Assault Weapons. The ballot summary prohibits possession of assault weapons defined as semi-automatic rifles and shotguns capable of holding more than 10 rounds of ammunition at once, either in fixed or detachable magazine or any other ammunition feeding device. Possession of handguns is not prohibited. Except military and law enforcement personnel in their official duties. So, governmental entities can have it, but they don't want you to. Exemption requires registration of assault weapons lawfully possessed prior to this provision effective date. Creates criminal penalties for violations of this amendment. A victimless crime referendum. Hey? So, I will read this in its entirety. Ooh, right there. Excellent. As I hear Article 1, Section being created or amend Article 1, Section 8, full text of proposed constitutional amendment. Article 1, Section 8 says here, as it reads right now, right to bear arms. A, the right of people to keep and bear arms in defense of themselves and of the lawful authority of the state shall not be infringed, except in that matter of bearer arms may be regulated by law. Except. So there's always been a compromise. I was against that from the very beginning. I will continue. B, there shall be a mandatory period of 3 days, excluding weekends and legal holidays, between purchase and delivery at retail of any handgun. For the purpose of the section, purchases means the transfer of money or valuable consideration to a retailer, and handguns mean a firearm capable of being carried and used by one hand, such as a pistol or revolver. Holders of a concealed weapons permit as prescribed in law for the law shall not be subject to this provision of this paragraph. So it's interesting about that because remember when Flip-Flop Bush Scott and those asswipes in Tallahassee voted the certain language of the School Safety Act? Say you have to be 21 and over now to purchase a rifle and have a 3-day waiting period at the state level. Totally unconstitutional, has to be voted on. So, just to give you guys a hint, a clue. And even Senator Farmer believes we're a bunch of morons, of course. But I will continue on here. See, the legislature shall enact legislation implementing subsection B of this section effective no later than December 31st, 1991, shall provide that anyone violating a provision of subject B shall be guilty of a felony. D, the restriction shall not apply to a trade or of another handgun. So, sometimes I see this a little bit different as well, but I will continue on. Now, this is underlined. This is going to be amended here from its entirety, the rest of it. E, the possession of an assault weapon, as that term is defined in the subsection, is prohibited in Florida except as provided in this section. The section shall be construed in conformity with the Second Amendment to the United States Constitution as intercepted by the United States Supreme Court. Well, told you right now, this organization are a bunch of illiterates. See, you see what's going on here? Like, you got to read between the lines. The lies! Not the lines, but the lies. The fiction. We'll continue on here. Definition. 1. Definition. A. Assault weapon for purpose of this subsection. Any semi-automatic rifle or shotgun capable of holding more than 10 rounds of ammunition at once, either in a fixed or detachable magazine or any other ammunition feeding device. This subsection does not apply to handguns. B. Semi-automatic for purposes of this section. Any weapon which fires a single projectile or a number of ball shots through a rifle or smooth bore for each single function of the trigger without further manual action required. C. Ammunition feeding devices for purposes of this subsection, any magazine, belt, drum, V-strip, or similar device for a firearm. 2. Limitations. A. This subsection shall not apply to military or law enforcement use by federal personnel in conduct of their duties, or to an assault weapon being imported for sale and delivery to a federal, state, or local governmental agency for use by employees of such agencies to perform official duties. Exceptionalism. Ain't that special? They want you to be enslaved, as he called involuntary servitude to be exact. 13th Amendment, right? Absolutely. This subsection does not apply to any firearms that is not semi-automatic, as defined in this subsection. C. This subsection does not apply to handguns, as defined in Article 1, Section 8B, for the Constitution. D. If a person had lawful possession of an assault weapon prior to the effective date of the subsection, and the person's possession of that assault weapon is not unlawful, 1. During the first year of the effective date of the subsection, or 2. After the person has registered that weapon by make, model, and serial number with the Florida Department of Law Enforcement or a successor agency as designated by the legislator. Registration records shall be available to the local, state, and federal local law enforcement agencies for valid law enforcement purposes, but shall otherwise be confidential. Can we say wet dream? Yeah, tell that to the people that survived the victims of the killing fields of Cambodia, Rwanda, even Uganda. I can go on and on and on and on. They believe you guys don't study history. Shoot. I have plenty of ammunition to really shred this to pieces. And I'm not the only one. I can tell you that. 3. Criminal penalties. Violation of this subject is a third-degree felony. The legislature may designate greater but not lesser penalties for violations. 4. Self-executing. This provision shall be self-executed except where legislative action is required. In subsection 2C, to implement registration of weapons lawfully possessed prior to the enactment of the subsection, or in subsection 3, to designate more severe penalty for the violation of this section. 5. Severability. The provisions of the subsection are severable. Any clause, sentence, paragraph, section, or subsection of this measure, or an application thereof, is adjudged invalid by any court of competent jurisdiction. Other provisions shall continue to be in effect to the fullest extent possible. 6. Effective date. The effective date of this amendment shall be 30 days after its passage by the voters. Ain't that nice? You see what's happening here? It's prohibition all over. Like the failed prohibition on drugs, alcohol, etc. I don't know where they get their education from and who's bending them or who's bending who, right? It's funny because I went to their website. I wasn't really too enthused, but this was approved. It's serial number 1811, date approved November 5th, 2018. And this is a petition sponsored by Ban Assault Weapons Now, 6619 South Dixie Highway, Suite 148, Miami, Florida, 33413. It's actually a UPS store. So it's a P.O. box. And it's funny, even their website's pathetic too. The whole goal of this amendment, my friends, is they want to control you. They want the government to be more powerful than you, legitimately. And this is why it's considered null and void, because it does violate multiple sections of the Florida Constitution, especially Article 1. 2, 9, 10, 12, 20, which I call it treason, and 23, the right of privacy. And Article 10, Section 2, which is entitled the militia. I will bring that in there as well. It was interesting because the political powers, okay, going to Article 1, the Declaration of Rights. Section 1, all political powers inherited in the people. The United States shall herein certain rights shall not be construed or denied or impair others retained by the people. Okay, very enumerating indeed, right? 2, basic rights. All natural persons, female and male alike, are equal before the law and have inalienable rights, among which are the right to enjoy and defend life and liberty, to pursue happiness, to be rewarded for the industry and acquire possession and protect property. No person shall be deprived of any right because of race, religion, or national origin or physical disability. I know they've taken that out with the whole, they took that out with illegal aliens, so that's been repealed. But, so right there, it's another smoking gun. We can hit Section 9. And as it reads, no person shall be deprived of life, liberty, or property without due process of law, or be twice put in jeopardy for the same offense, or be compelled in any criminal matter to be a witness against oneself. The red flag laws, null and void. I think every county in the state should nullify it, because if you don't, you're contradicting your oath of office on those little elected servants and the voters. For the elected servants, Article 2, Section 5. To all the voters, read your oath of registration before you sign. And 10 could be interesting too. It says here, prohibited laws. No bill of attainder, ex post facto law, or law impairing the obligation of contract shall be passed. And we can hit number 12, of course. Search and seizures. The rights of the people to be secure in their persons, houses, papers, and effects against unreasonable search and seizures and against unreasonable interception of private communications by any means shall not be violated. No, and I'll continue on. Why not? No warrant shall be issued except upon probable cause supported by affidavit, particularly describing the place or places to be searched, the person or persons, thing or things to be seized, the communication to be intercepted, and the nature of evidence to be obtained. The right shall be construed in conformity with the Fourth Amendment to the U.S. Constitution as interpreted by the United States Supreme Court. Articles or information obtained in a violation of this right shall not be admissible in evidence, and such articles or information would be inadmissible under decisions of the United States Supreme Court construing the Fourth Amendment to the U.S. Constitution. So these people have to have warrants. All right, and I can just keep on going down here. We get Article 20, which I call treason. Yeah, I call it treasonous. Treasonous quacks indeed. All right? This organization proves to be less patriotic than Benedict Arnold. Treason against the state shall consist only in levying war against adhering to its enemies or giving them aid and comfort. And no person shall be convicted of treason except on the testimony of two witnesses, the same overt act, or in confession in open court. I look at this as possibly levying war. Antebellum to it. Remember, we got domestic enemies within our own state government. And 23. Right of privacy. Every person has the right to be let alone and free from governmental intrusion into the person's private life, except as otherwise provided herein. This section shall not be construed to limit the public's rights to access to public records and as meetings as provided by law. So they want to do registration. This violates Article 1, Section 23 of the Supreme Law of Florida. Great example. How many of you remember that abortion amendment? They want to that's actually compromising the right of privacy. It got shot down. So all these people here who support this particular petition, if you voted against the abortion amendment in 2012, you got to shred this into oblivion. No exceptions. It's fact. I'm giving you facts. All right, plain and simple. It's self-explanatory. Your defense mechanized rhetoric is null and void. And all you folks out there, please download this and share this to all those individuals that hate freedom. Tyrannical buffoons that they are. Bunch of fools that believe that government will protect them. It's nothing more than a pretentious, wet dream. And I'm gonna, one thing about this ballot too, can jeopardize the militia under Article 10, Section 2. As it reads here, A, the militia shall be composed of all able-bodied inhabitants of the state who are and have declared their intention to become citizens of the United States, and no person, because of religious or creed, opinion shall be exempt from military duty, except conditions upon provided by law. The organizing, equipping, housing, maintaining, and discipline of the militia, and the safekeeping of public arms may be provided by law, by law. C, the government shall appoint all commissioned officers of the militia, including an adjutant general, who shall be the chief of staff. The appointment of all general officers shall be subject to confirmation by the Senate. D, qualification of personnel and officers of the federally recognized National Guard, including the adjutant general, and the grounds and the proceedings for the discipline removal shall conform to the appropriate United States Army or Air Force regulations and usage. So you can say that's a separate entity. So this is what these folks really got to look at. So that's why I'm very observant and fair. This petition is null and void. Everything is on its face. Prima facie. And this little ban assault weapons now organization are nothing more than control freaks. Like it or not. And even though the horrific events that happen in those particular schools, the schools and the Parkland, it's horrible. I'm effing infuriated about it still. Because there were laws in the books that did not protect those kids. I know I may digress in once in a while, forgive me, but for those folks that don't know, I called out my Fort Lauderdale commissioners on this. They never responded. Federal, state, and local laws did not protect those kids over there. And of course, you got the witch hunting federalized sheriff, Scott Israel, had the audacity to blame gun owners, the NRA, etc. And don't get me wrong, I'm critical of the National Rifle Association at times myself. But when you witch hunt, you're the wuss. You're the coward. I condemn people like that. Witch hunters are parasites, psychic vampires. They will toss their great closest colleague to the wolves. I know I might have digressed, so forgive me on that, my friends. And that's how I look at it. Everything right here is in good faith. The ballot, shred it, wipe your rear end with it, and send it back to these fools. I'm sorry. That's how I look at a bunch of illiterates. They'd be well funded. I don't give a damn. Information supersedes money. They want you to believe that. They want you to live in fear. I say don't. Because if not, your integrity, your creed, even with the ancient Abrahamic roots, right? Judaism, Christianity, okay, Muslim, Islam, because of that area too. Self-defense is righteous regardless. And you want people to prepare ourselves the best at our abilities, including if we have to go if this place gets invaded, civil unrest, etc. And making sure we got enough firepower to equalize the government if necessary. Any questions? I recommend you folks look up the Battle of Athens, Tennessee, that happened on August 1st and 2nd, 1946. It was mainly about election fraud. Alright, speaking of firearms, this one came out yesterday from the New American. Yeah, it's John Birch Society, but you know what? You got some good information here. It's entitled Guns Save Lives. Armed Citizens Thought Active Shooter 94% of the Time. This is by Swellen Duke. You gotta hear police officer go by. It is a testimony as to why gun control should be hitting your target. While a study shows that 98% of mass shootings occur in gun-free zones, a more recent study indicates how these events can be thwarted by armed citizens. In fact, it finds that when such Americans are present, they have a 94% success rate at stopping or impeding active shooters. As the National Sentinel reports, referencing the FBI, a report by Jacob Polson at concealedcarry.com found that in 94% of the cases, armed citizens successfully intervened during what Bureau calls active shooter events, which is defined by the FBI as one or more individuals actively engaged in killing or attempting to kill people in a populated area. Polson note that the FBI has published 3 reports that detailed active shooter events between 2000 and 2010. The first covers events between 2000 and 2013, the second from 2014 to 2015, and the third from 2016 to 2017. He notes that the FBI does not include domestic shooting incidents or gang-related shootings in its reports. As also for the FBI to define an incident as an active shooter incident, both law enforcement personnel and citizens have to have potential to affect the outcome of the event based upon their responses to the situation, he writes. It turns out that 283 events qualify as active shooting incidents, and Paulson and his colleagues found that of them, an armed citizen was present 11.7% of the time in 33 cases. Moreover, the Sentinel also informed a further examination of those 33 cases found armed citizens were successful at stopping The active shooter, 75.8% of the time, 25 incidences were successful in reducing the loss of life, and an additional 18.2%, 6 of incidents. Translated, armed citizens are successful 94% of the time at the active shooter events, he concluded. The original ConcealedCarry.com report, which includes many interesting charts, is found here. You can look it up yourself. The intuitive to some, this study is not surprising. It has been long shown that there simply is no correlation between stricter gun control laws and lower murder rates. In fact, as president of the Crime Prevention Research Center, John R. Lott Jr. has put it, it appears that more guns equal less crime. Just consider the following little-known facts. While often portrayed as a Wild West murder and mayhem, the United States ranks only 83rd amongst the world nations at international homicide rate, according to Index Mundi. Countries such as Russia, Mexico, and Brazil have far stricter gun laws than the United States, but also more homicide. Furthermore, as Professor Thomas Sowell wrote, 2012 gun ownership has been 3 times as high in Switzerland as in Germany, but Swiss has a lower murder rate. Other countries with high rates of gun ownership and lower murder rates include Israel, New Zealand, and Finland. Great Britain has a lower homicide rate than does the United States, but the UK has always had a lower homicide rate, even back when both nations had few gun control laws, and the UK's crime rate is higher now than it was. Moreover, such as New Hampshire have lower murder rates than it does Britain, despite having for higher gun ownership rates. Also note that London made news this year, surpassing New York City in homicides for the first time in 2 centuries. Vermont has approximately the same gun ownership rate as Louisiana, but 1/8 the murder rate. Despite Japan's very strict gun control laws, Japanese descended Americans living in the United States with relatively easy access to firearms have a murder rate half of that Japanese living in Japan. As Dr. Swell also informed, the rate of gun ownership is higher in rural areas than in urban areas, but the murder rate is higher in urban areas. The rate of gun ownership is higher among whites than among blacks, but the murder rate is higher among blacks. For the country as a whole, handgun ownership doubled in the late 20th century while murder rate went down. Probable people over 50 are more likely to own guns than those under 50, but the latter have a higher murder rate. The explanation, demographics, as Swallow puts it, is not the guns that explain different murder rates, it's the people. As for other myths, it's often heard that guns are more likely to be used against their owners than anyone else, but this is deceptive because it includes suicides in the statistics. In fact, suicide accounts for most U.S. gun deaths with 22,938 gun suicides in 2016 versus 14,415 gun homicides. Oh, sorry about that. Note also that while a tragic shooting grabs headlines, a study by Florida State University criminologist Gary Kleck, a liberal Democrat and lifelong ACLU member, found that guns are used by good citizens 2.2 to 2.5 million times per year to deter crime. Yet this goes largely unnoticed, not only because the media are reluctant to portray firearms use positively, but because such defensive use involves merely brandishing a gun, and no blood means no story. As gun-free zones versus gun-carrying citizens, even those supporting the former publicly apparently know better privately, just consider a largely forgotten video made in 2013 by Project Petition, posing as a citizen against senseless violence. Project Petition operatives Visit home of ex-Attorney General Eric Holder and various anti-Second Amendment left-wing journalists to ask them they support the cause and post their lawn and decide this home is probably gun-free. You can see it for yourselves. Alright. Not only did all decline, but one actually said, I agree with you, and I'm on your side of this, but I'm just wondering if that's not an invitation to somebody with a gun. Such hypocrisy is made the following the top comment under the video. They can't prevent their neighbor from putting up a sign saying my neighbor is probably gun-free with an arrow. It's a good idea, actually. It may not be 94% successful at stopping active shooters at the anti-gun melting pen, but you'd be performing a charitable act of helping someone live a more sincere life. Well, you know, I think I do find it good. You have to look at everything across the board, and the gentleman from the lifelong ACLU member made that statement. Gary Clack. There's a link they have links in here too, folks, so you can see it for yourselves. It's amazing. But the dingbats out there don't want you to know it. This is why, my friends, it's good to know these tools. It's good to take responsibility. Yes, firearm safety is everyone's responsibility. Educate yourselves. When you carry, have a higher standard. Don't be the aggressor. Be the protector. From the law of self-defense, I love that great quote. Having a gun makes you harder to kill. Knowing the law makes you harder to convict. And that's all I have to say. I thank everyone for listening, plus feel free to download and share throughout your social media networks. If you have any questions, comments, or we say something that's interesting, to check out, whatever you do, please address your correspondences with decorum. And I will post all my social media sites and email contacts on my Spreaker page. Alright? Once again, thank you for your time. Plus, always remember that demoniac resistance is helping for the soul and liberate humanity. Until next time, take care of yourselves. Keep on spreading love. And may your guardian spirits be with you.